Right. Okay. So that was last week's class. Now this week we are going to take it a bit deeper, and this is the topic of mental health or anxiety and things like that. It's lesson number 4. So in the student book, it'll probably be on page number 91. Quite a unique approach to overcoming anxieties and challenges, like mental challenges. Okay. We'll start with a joke. There were 3 psychologists that were sitting together, and one says, "I gotta confess, every patient that walks in, I steal from them. I steal a lot of money, and yeah, I steal the money, and I've never told anyone about this." The next psychiatrist says, "I've got something to confess. Every patient that comes in, I fantasize about killing them." Oh, okay, and I never told anyone until today. And then the third psychiatrist says, "I've got something to confess. I've got a secret to confess. I don't know how to keep a secret." So that's the first joke. Another one would be
That's a good one.
yeah, which is a bit true. It's a bit true, and that is that there was 2 psychiatrists, seasoned psychologists after many, many years. One meets the other, and the first one is obviously worn out. He's got white hair. He's tired. He's burnt out. He's overworked. And the other one, he looks young, like he just graduated from uni. So the one who looks tired says to the one who looks fresh, he says, "How do you look so good? After all these years of listening to people's tzaras, people's problems, and being there for people, how are you able to stay so?" So he says, "What? You actually listen?" Now, okay, well, I think what's very important to say as let me just put on the slideshow. Give me a second. Okay, here you go. What's important to say as a preference is that what we're going to say is all-inclusive advice. So although just like with physical health, each scenario is individual. Each case has to be judged individually, and it's different. Everyone's circumstances are different as well. But there's one thing which we're going to talk about today, which I think can benefit most cases. And it's something that we saw a lot, kind of across the board with the Rebbe's. When people came to the Rebbe, asked the Rebbe for advice on these things, that was kind of a very common approach. Now, obviously, we know the Rebbe wasn't a psychiatrist necessarily, wasn't a psychologist or psychiatrist necessarily, but he, because he was so well versed in the Torah and in Torah's attitudes to things, so he kind of projected how the Torah would see this, right? So that's why people came to him. Not always for professional. Obviously, if you have a real problem, you go to a psychiatrist, right? We're not saying not. But at the same time, this is the Torah's insight, as the Torah can give many insights to everything in life. So this is what the Torah would say about this. Now, how does a regular therapy session look? You usually have a fish tank, right? Or something like that. And you have someone sitting down or lying down, and someone sitting next to him, and the person who's sitting down is talking and expressing everything which is worrying him, talking about all his problems, and the therapist, psychiatrist, is listening, mainly listening, giving an input, and definitely sending a nice bill at the end of it, right? So that's how a regular therapy session looks. Now, the common theme, right, when someone goes to a therapist is you have a problem, you're fixed on a problem, and you talk about the problem in order to understand it, right? So that's, very common. You have a problem, you talk about it. You dive deeply into the thoughts and into the problem and where it could be coming from. And first, you obviously talk about the problem, and then you get into where it can be coming from. Now, um, obviously, that's a very valuable approach. It says Yediyat, we say in the Jewish writings, it says Yediyat hamachala chatzi refuah, which means knowing the sickness is already half the cure. That's already something, right? So that's the first step, of course. And obviously, that is without a doubt, many times the Rebbe would tell people to take that approach when someone was struggling with emotional wellness. But today, we're going to discuss a bit of a different approach. And it says in Kohelet. I'm not sure how to say Kohelet in English. One of the books of the Tanakh, Shlomo, I think, wrote it. Let's find out the book. The book of Kohelet is Ecclesiastes, yeah, Ecclesiastes, something like that. Anyhow, it says in Kohelet like this.
Ecclesiastes.
Yeah, sorry, Ecclesiastes. Very good.
That's okay.
It says like this: Da'aga belev ish yisichenu. Right, which means literally, if there's a worry in your heart, right, a worry in the heart of a man, yisichenu, he should talk about it, right? That's the literal translation, right? That's the very important piece of advice over there. If you have a problem, you want to talk about it to someone. You want to dwell upon it, and you want to expound, and you want to see how to deal with it, right? But the hidden message is yisicheno with a samach, right? So there's yisicheno with a shin, which means talk about it. Yisicheno with a samach means to distract yourself from it, to remove your attention from it. That's what Yisichena means with a samach. So the hidden message is that sometimes when you have a problem, the best thing to do is not to focus on it at all, not to even talk about it. Distract yourself from it entirely. Now, the reason for that is as follows. The flow of life, right? A person inherently, life of a person is a wellspring of health and normalcy and balance and goodness. And the world is filled with people, right, which connect to achieve their goals and share their life's experiences and so on and so forth. Now, the problem is that when we have a problem and we focus on it too much and we move our attention away from the flow of life and we become stuck in the problem, we become overly absorbed in ourselves, in our problems, and that can actually be quite a destructive thing. So that's the general approach. This can lead to a downward spiral. It's like an addiction. When you give it some attention, it can give you some relief. But then it comes back asking for more attention and more attention and more attention until it completely encompasses you, right? So sometimes someone can have a problem, and instead of allowing himself to move forward from this problem, he is holding himself in the problem by constantly focusing on it and talking about it and moaning about it, right? The Yiddish word is krechzing, which means to say oi, oi the whole time. Things are so bad, right? So that's the approach, moving the mind away from bothersome thoughts and towards productive activities. So you got to try when you have a problem, a worry which is bothering you, right, or some type of problem bothering your mind. You have to try, to whatever extent possible, to move your mind away from those thoughts and slowly re-engage in the flow of life. The flow of life is healthy, right? Now, yeah. And this is, can be more effective than sometimes than being affixed and obsessed with your problem. Okay. That's the general approach in 2 words. Okay, so actively thinking about something else. There's the elephant in the room, and you think about something else. Okay, now we're now going to get into a 4-case study where we have 2 letters of the Rebbe and 2 videos, and each one is addressing a different type of person in a different type of situation, and different advice was given, but they all share the same underlying principle, right? Okay, so now the first case study is a letter to a young man, right? He's a young man who writes to the Rebbe. He's having bothersome thoughts, which it's not clear what those thoughts were, but thoughts which were negative, which were bothering him. Maybe it was doubt, maybe it was impure things or whatever it was. He was bothered by it, and he had the courage to write a letter to the Rebbe asking what he should do. And he also wrote in his letter that he feels a lot of guilt about these thoughts. So there's the thoughts and there's the guilt about having them. So this is the reply of the Rebbe. You see in text number 1a, page 92. With regard to the thought which you expressed in your letter, I believe I have already written to you before that there are many problems and states of mind which are best dealt with by dismissing them from the mind completely, at any rate for a period of time. It is then possible to return to those problems with a fresh mind and in a more objective state, so as to evaluate the problems in their true perspective and reality, and it is in then easier to find the proper solution. In the vast majority of such cases, the individual himself can decide how long this period of dismissal from attention should be, judging by the degree of objectivity which he can attain as time goes on. So what the Rebbe is saying is like this. There's the elephant in the room, right? There's the problem. You have an elephant in the room, the best thing to do is not to pet it or to feed it or to hit it. The best thing for now is to actively look away from it. Of course, it's very difficult to look away from it. How do you do that? It's an elephant, right? But the idea is that you have to take a step back to see the problem objectively. While you're suffering from this problem, you're subjective, right? The way you deal with it would also be subjective. You might have frustration and stuff like that, but when you take a step back, focus on something else, and then choose when you want to get back into this problem. Revisit it, right? At your own time. Take whatever you need. So how do you do this? How do you remove your thoughts? You know, they say there's something called the ironic process theory, which obviously means that when you are trying not to think about something, you end up thinking about it more than if you just, not. If you try not to think about a pink elephant, you'll think about the pink elephant. Anyhow, so on page 93, the letter continues. Needless to say also that it is not an easy thing to dismiss a problem from the mind, especially a matter that involves one's own self. This would be almost impossible unless one can engage one's thoughts and attention in a completely unrelated subject. The man's thinking process is constantly in a state of flux and has tendencies to completely go, consciously or subconsciously, to revert to the subject matter which one wishes to dismiss from the mind. Therefore, when resolving to dismiss the matter from one's mind, it's necessary immediately to find some other subject unrelated to the first in which to engage one's attention. Another point is to talk to friends. So what the Rebbe is saying over here is don't actively try and stop thinking about it, but think about something else completely unrelated. Have, so to speak, in your pocket a topic which you can always bounce back to in times of negative thoughts. This is across the board, from simple negative thoughts to something which is more serious. Think about something completely unrelated. And also you can talk to your friends who would, understand you a bit, to ask their advice as to what something can be to fall back on. Another thought. Okay, but Tati's in the middle of a class. I'm a bit busy, okay? Can you wait till I'm finished? Thank you. So people the only way for this to work is to have thoughts ready, subjects ready to engage your mind in, right? Okay. Here we have another text. Oh, sorry, it's the same letter, which goes on to explain the idea of regret and guilt. And that is, there is a teaching from our sages. Nothing stands in the way of teshuvah, right? Nothing stands in the way of repentance for the past and commitment of the future, which is a Jewish concept, that nothing is in the way of that, right? You can't break the law and tell the judge in the court that you did repentance. You still have to pay your fine. And in Judaism also, if you did damage, you have to pay the fine. But if you sinned to Hashem, there's always a way to do repentance. So, but in order to do repentance, you have to stop. transgressing immediately, right? Whether it's a sin of commission or of omission, right? Doing or not doing, a negative transgression or positive. You have to immediately stop or start doing what you should be doing, right? But when you remain, and when you one of the obvious reasons, I'll read the text inside. One of the obvious reasons for this is that brooding over past failures is bound to be depressing and discouraging, and would undermine one's confidence in the future, even one's confidence in the efficiency of teshuvah. Therefore, it is advisable to dismiss such thoughts for the time being and leave them for the more propitious time. May God grant that you should have good news to report in regard to all the above. Right? So number one, Judaism believes in the tshuva, second chances. Number two, in order for tshuva to work, one's actual behavior must change for the better. We can't do repentance while sinning. The example brought for that would be someone dipping, which is brought by the sages, is someone dipping in the mikveh to purify himself while holding something impure in their hand, you know. But at the same time, don't brood over the past. Don't stay in the past. Don't stay in the guilt. You need to free yourself and move your mind away from the sin completely. So part of teshuvah is not just stopping to sin and feeling bad about your sin, but forgetting about your sin, detaching yourself from your sin, at least for the time being. There was a man who was born, I think he was born into an Orthodox family in Israel in the 1940s or 30s, and he then left completely the Jewish lifestyle, became completely secular and very, kind of anti-religious and stuff, and then he at some point became a disciple of the Rebbe, a chassid of the Rebbe, and he became actually a great Hasidic leader in the town of Haifa. And when he first went to the Rabbi, he asked the Rabbi a tikkun, which a tikkun means a path to repentance. Sometimes when someone wanted to do teshuvah, when someone wanted to repent, they would ask a righteous man, a tzaddik, for their specific tikkun. And the tzaddik, understanding the soul of the person, would give them a specific path. And the Rebbe said, tikkun, never mind, serve Hashem with joy. That's your responsibility now. So, and that changed his life. It allowed him to completely move on and become a different person. And then later on in his life, he focused a bit on his past and his teshuvah and things like that. So that's very important. So here in the letter, the Rabbi is advising this young man about his problems, telling him, think about other things, right? And don't stick in the past. Don't stay in the past. And engage in unrelated ideas. Now, the question is this denial? Are we saying that you should live in denial? Okay, if I have a problem, I'm just saying, forget about that. Think about something else.
Sorry?
Mickey,
Yes?
you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm just asking time to tend the phone. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. Now I want to move on to our next study. Before we answer that question, we're going to move on to the next case. And that is a video of a grandson telling about his grandmother's turbulent life story and her emotional struggles and the Rebbe's advice to her.
My grandmother, Haiba Lipsker, was a very, very special and holy woman. Like many of our grandmothers, she did not enjoy a serene and easy, smooth life. Growing up in Bolshevik communist Russia as a Jew was difficult. Raising a family in Georgia during the 1930s under Stalin's tyranny was far from simple. Then came the war. They escaped the former Soviet Union on false papers, came to the displaced persons camps, the DP camps. Again, life was anything but serene, raising a large family, sometimes in one-bedroom flat. My grandparents made it in 1947 to the United States of America. They settled on a farm in New Jersey. That too didn't turn out so successful, and they relocated to Brooklyn, New York. My grandparents raised 9 beautiful, amazing children.
Oh, sorry about that. Oh.
Raised 9 beautiful, amazing children and a 10th orphan. Making a livelihood proved very complicated, and the upheavals of her life took their toll on her. She suffered from anxiety, from depression, from melancholy. And one day, my grandmother consulted the Lubavitcher Rebbe what to do about her internal psychological and emotional state. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave her fascinating advice. He suggested to her that she go to as many Jewish weddings as possible and to dance away at these weddings and inspire other people to dance. As it happens to be, my grandmother was an exceptionally skilled dancer. She embraced the Rebbe's advice, and for decades, she would go to every possible wedding and dance away. Family, friends, relatives, community members, and sometimes complete strangers. Everybody knew Mrs. Lipsker is here. She is the life of the wedding and the life of the party. This was not part of her nature. This was quite contrary to her nature, but she did it, and she did it with every fiber of her being. She lived in Crown Heights in Brooklyn. There were many Bali children, young women and men who returned to Judaism, and they had small families attending the wedding, or sometimes no families. And my grandmother would come in. Young women and men who returned of her being. She lived in Crown Heights in Brooklyn. There were many Bali Tshuva, young women and men who returned to Judaism, and they had small families attending the wedding, or sometimes no families. And my grandmother would come in, and she brought so much joy and vigor and stamina and inspiration to the wedding. She would dance away sometimes for hours with the bride and with the mothers and with the siblings and with the families and with the relatives. And indeed, the joy that she brought to hundreds and thousands of people over long decades, it came back to her. It gave her so much joy and strength and fortitude and resilience and inspiration. Besides the fact, exercising a few times a week for a few hours a night, dancing with all your might is also very effective for anxiety.
Beautiful. So here we see the Rebbe advising a woman struggling with anxiety to dance at as many weddings as possible. Very good. Okay, the next case we're going to get into is a small video of the Rebbe's interaction with a former prisoner. Now, the Rebbe founded an institution called the Aleph Institute. Don't know if anyone's heard of the Aleph Institute. It's not very big in Australia, if it exists at all, but it exists hugely in America. And what they do is they help Jewish individuals who are incarcerated get through the years of incarceration. They help them with mitzvahs, with Torah, and they help them obviously stay. They help them get through it. They help them survive. Kosher food and so on and so forth. Before you watch the video, there's a bit of context over here, and that is people came to the Rebbe for advice, and the Rebbe was able to talk to them in a certain way that others might not be able to talk to them. It's like if you talk to your friend in one way that's suitable, but a parent, but to your parent or to your child, it's not suitable. So people came to the Rebbe for a certain type of openness and straight to the point type of talk. So here you'll see a brief interaction, but you'll see what the Rebbe tells this person.
Listen, prison, Rabbi here and also
Brother Matthew, just don't forget about all this past.
I know.
It's not here the same. You know what Passover is?
Yes.
Yeah. If the Jews have forgotten about Messiah, it is time for you to forget about your prison also. God much bless you. Even if it's difficult, try your best. God much bless you.
Thank you.
Again, we see the Rebbe encouraging a person to heal from their past, not by engaging in it, but by trying to leave behind that Egypt that is hard, the Rebbe concluded, but he should try his best. Right? The Rebbe always says, I see it's hard, I understand it's hard, but you should try your best. And when the Jewish people left Egypt, it's interesting that the generation which went into Israel were not the generation that left Egypt. It was only their children. So there was 40 years in the desert, and the ones that actually left Egypt that were over 20, the adults, passed away in the desert. And only their children entered Israel with Yeshua. And the reason is because the ones which left Egypt weren't able to completely detach and forget Egypt. They weren't able to completely move on. They had this mentality, a bit of the Egypt mentality. So they weren't able to settle Israel. And what we needed to settle Israel, Canaan, is people with a different attitude. Does anyone have any questions on what we've said until now? Okay. I'll give a summary again. I see someone there. Great that people like prisoners are not judged and still feel valued by the Rebbe. Yes, definitely. No one felt judged. People felt extremely understood. And that's also why the people came to the Rebbe, and that's why the Rebbe was able to talk to people like that. It's like a grandfather, like you have a teenager, God forbid, which is, for example, just an example, taking drugs. So if his parents sit him down and say, get off those drugs, they're killing you, they're terrible, he'll actually, not only will he take drugs, but he won't even open up to his parents anymore about it. It will have the wrong effect. But usually if the grandparents or someone that he respects and looks at as a wise figure talks to him about it, that can have a good effect. That can be, look him in the eyes and tell him, these are killing you, boy. Get off the drugs. That can help. It's the same thing with the Rebbe. Okay, the next study we're going to do, the last one of these four, is siblings issue. And now you can go to page 95, text 2a. It's an interesting response. We don't have obviously the letter, so we don't have the letter to the Rebbe ever. That's not published. There's a lot of books of the Rebbe's answers to people, but we only have the answers. We don't have what people publish because that's private. And then also in the answers, the names are omitted, and any other private details will also be omitted. So just the general answers there. But sometimes you can figure out, based off the letter, some clues. You can figure out if it was a man or a woman. An interesting example is that the Rebbe for men would say, Shalom, would start the letter, Shalom uvracha, which means greetings and blessings. And for a woman, the Rebbe would write, Bracha v'shalom, blessings and greetings. I don't know why, but that's... So here we see the letter that Rebbe writes to a woman who had two daughters, and the younger daughter was having a tough time emotionally, and she seemed to be uninterested in certain activities that her older sister was interested in. And the mother, this was distressing the mother, and the mother wrote a letter to the Rebbe explaining the daughter's situation. And the daughter was seeing a therapist, and they were concerned. So let's have a look at the letter. The reason for your younger daughter's condition are not at all complicated. The causes seem to lie in the fact that the daughter is subconsciously jealous of her older sister, and such a feeling manifests itself by a desire not to be interested in those activities where the person is unable to compete successfully. Therefore, your younger daughter shows little inclination to engage in the activities in which her sister is more successful than she. However, since such is the attitude of jealousy, creating a subconscious feeling of guilt, one is prone to compensate for it by an outward show of attachment. That is why she flies to the defense of a sister if anyone should say anything disrepaging of her, against her. So the Rebbe makes a few points over here. Firstly, don't panic, the Rebbe tells the mother. Your daughter is okay. She's going through a painful but an understandable experience. Number two is the Rebbe explains his view regarding the root cause of the daughter's disposition, and explaining that her disinterest in certain activities and her beyond normal attachment to a defense of her older sister, they both stem from her jealousy, from a subconscious jealousy caused by the fact that her older sister is better at certain activities. And she will withdraw from those activities. She won't want to engage in those activities because she knows that she'll never be better than her older sister at those activities. But it creates guilt at the same time because of her negative feelings. So that she tries to soothe by always standing by her sister's defense. That's the problem. That's the kind of diagnosis that the Rebbe said. And now let's look at the solution that the Rebbe gives. At the same time, this diagnosis suggests also the method of therapy, namely that every effort should be made to restore her confidence by offering her opportunities to engage in such activities where she can take a leading part and excel herself. Needless to say, this should be done in a gradual way, for in her present state of mind, she would be reluctant to undertake responsibilities all at once. But surely, both at school and in other cultural circles, there are opportunities for her to develop her artistic and other talents It would be psychologically beneficial for her if the activities would be of a kind in which her sister does not participate. Choice of church activities is fairly wide, and they could be cultural, charitable, or youth work among Jewish youth, and the like. So the Rebbe basically is saying that the solution would be is to find her own area, find her an area where she can excel without competing with the sister. So doing something that the sister isn't doing, finding her that, and having her do really well at that. And that will rebuild this confidence. Right? Now here in this fascinating letter, we see the Rebbe's approach applied again. The Rebbe firstly underlines the issue, right? The jealousy problem, feeling inferior and therefore jealous. But the Rebbe doesn't advise the mother to deal with the jealousy directly, right? Or discuss it with their daughter. Don't be jealous, and so on and so forth. Instead, the Rebbe says, move away, digress from the elephant in the room, and give your daughter areas entirely unrelated to her sister, areas in which her health and self-esteem can grow on its own terms and its own pace. This is the best way to restore a healthy relationship between sisters and repair the younger sister's mental state. So here you see a similar piece of advice than as the previous ones, but kind of with the same root, and that is don't focus on the problem itself. Find a way to focus on something else and make the girl excel in something else. Now, what does everyone think about that? Meaning, on the one hand, it kind of makes sense, but on the other hand, don't problems need to be dealt with? Don't things need to be spoken about? I'll give you an example. If you're in a marriage or in a relationship, any relationship for that matter, and there's a problem, there's a miscommunication. How do you deal with it? By communicating, by talking about it, by talking about the problem. So how are we saying that the best way to deal with it is to diverge from it and focus on something else?
Rabbeinu,
Yeah,
are you asking us?
I'm asking you, of course.
Oh.
מה אתה חושב? What do you think about this?
I think that you can't make someone feel something just by saying you should feel this or you shouldn't feel it. If someone is feeling jealousy and you say to them, don't feel jealous, I don't think it's going to do much for them.
Right. So what's the better approach?
The better approach is to find a way to look at things that they're good at. Like you said, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
Instead of focusing on the negative, it is great positive.
exactly. Like help them build themselves up. If you have two kids and one is jealous of the other, instead of telling him not to be jealous, look at why he's jealous. Look at the story he's telling. And help him facilitate his own growth. Help him to become good and feel good about himself. Now, what's the source? Does this exist? What's the philosophical basis of this? Where's this approach coming from? Is it from Torah, or is it just an easy way out? That's what we're asking.
Definitely from Torah,
Exactly.
from Aaron and Moses.
What do you mean? Oh, you say
that
it comes from
that
yeah.
that Aaron wasn't to give machatzit shekel, and he was jealous. And Rashi says that God said, "Don't be jealous because you're gonna be the high priest."
Ah, very good. Yeah. So here you
Pasuk Aleph.
see. Very good. So here you see how building someone up, making them feel good about themselves is the best way. Okay. What is the Torah basis for the Rebbe's approach, and what is the logical basis? Why does it work? Now let's look at two letters from one interview with a renowned psychologist that might help us understand. The first letter is in page 98, text number 3, to a female mental health professional who asked the Rebbe advice about something. So it's in Hebrew. The Rebbe says, "It is difficult for me to counsel from afar, as the conditions of the country, the family, and so on have a direct bearing on the situation. Those who observe a situation from close proximity are better and more expertly equipped to arrive at an effective treatment. However, since you have already written to me, and everything is by divine providence, I wish to emphasize something that I have witnessed in the majority of similar cases. A decisive and extremely effective method, which to my amazement is not used, at least not as much as it should be used, is Hesech Hada'at, which means guiding the patient to entirely remove their mind from actively dwelling on the problematic issues at hand. The more that a patient succeeds in ceasing to think about and dwell upon those issues that are the cause of their problem, the greater will be the ability of their natural eternal healing powers, along with the other positive curative aspects, to function with increased intensity and bring about healing. The above may be accomplished through arranging that these individuals are preoccupied with activities that lead to personal fulfillment, such as doing someone else a favor, something that in any case is acceptable to all and therefore should be not difficult to convince them to do. This is particularly so nowadays when instability is so prevalent and individual needs are so numerous. It is relatively simple to find a way for these individuals to help others with activities. These are the constant with the needs. These are the consonant with the needs and nature of the local and of the individual who requires healing. So the following idea is what's emerging. The theory behind this whole thing, is that the Rebbe believed in the existence of a fundamental inner health within every person. Right? We spoke about the true essence of every person being good, so health as well. Now, when disturbing thoughts become dominant, like dominant voice, so your inner health becomes the becomes the back burner. The more disturbing thoughts and issues become the center, the more your natural health takes the back seat. Right? Divine inner health lies at the core of every human being. Engaging the mind in a healthy place brings that to the forefront. So when you focus on good things, or when you put less focus on the negative thoughts, you allow your inner health to reemerge. That's the essence of the approach, is the true belief that every person inherently is healthy and good, and naturally he's healthy. The problem is when we focus on negativity, and the more we focus on negative things, the more our inherent health mental health and stability takes the back seat. If we focus on healthy and balanced and moral and good and productive thoughts, positive thoughts, we allow our inner health to heal us and to keep us healthy. Isn't that interesting? They did a census, and they realized that today we've never had more things than we do. As now, like in history, we've never had as many things as we do now. Doesn't mean to say that there isn't poor people, right? Plenty of poverty, unfortunately, but in the Western world, the standard that we live by and the amount of things we have are by far so much more than years ago. But despite this, at least in America, I think 60 to 70% of people have dealt with or are dealing with now mental health challenges. And one of the reasons for that would be our focus. We don't know how to, just focus on good things and positive things. We're constantly looking at what we don't have. We're constantly looking at somebody else. We're constantly, we're very sensitive. So if someone offends us, we think about it. It stays in us. Now it takes tremendous faith and confidence to tell someone to look away from their darkness and to focus on the good. Why do we think that why are we saying that the health is the inherent at the core of the person? Maybe the elephant in the room is the true person. Maybe the problems are the person, and the health and the balance and the stability, maybe that's something you have to acquire. So for that we have the next letter in page 100, to a young woman who's going through a very difficult stage in her life, and she's having bad thoughts about herself, dramatically bad thoughts about herself. And here you see an idea that the Rebbe articulates. The Rebbe says like this: I fail to see any grounds for your dejection and for your statement that everything has suddenly fallen apart. Since your anxiety is unfounded, it will not last long. Started today and gone tomorrow. That is, provided you do not actively invite morose thoughts that run contrary to human nature and the dictates of a Torah of life, which requires from each of us to serve God specifically with joy. In truth, this service is possible and necessary at each moment of life. Right? So you can always be joyful, and it's necessary to always be joyful. You should. So the Rebbe's telling her that it's not true, right? It's not true, and therefore, it's not going to last as long as you don't feed it. Don't feed your depression. Don't feed your negative thoughts, and then it will pass. Obviously, sometimes when people are really going through a real depression, they know they need to go to a psychologist 100%. That has to be dealt with, right? But in general, try not to feed these things. I mean, that also applies to a serious case. Don't dwell in it. You surely recognize, backed also with personal experience, that verily observable reality that if it's so difficult to battle a certain mood, the best advice is to distract its attention from the mood. Not by fighting it, but by focusing your thoughts elsewhere. The general motto for this approach is God made humans straightforward, but they sought many complications. From the same Kohelet, I'm not going to try and pronounce the word again. It says that God made humans straightforward. Inherently, we're straightforward, we're simple beings, but we seek complications. Since the complications come from they, therefore they have the ability to nullify them easily. I will conclude with my advice. Since you sought my counsel, completely divert your mind from all introspective, self-examining thoughts. Proceed with the confidence along with life's path, since God's providence accompanies each of us at each step of our lives, not only regarding matters that we consider highly important, but in every detail of our life. So the Rebbe is telling this girl that the best solution is to divert your mind from self-examining thought. Don't think about yourself. We know that being depressed and dejected is a form of self-centeredness. It's of self-observation. Be involved in something else. Go help someone. When you're feeling offended, when you're feeling angry, when you're feeling sad, look for a bit of chesed. Look for someone to help. Look for a bit of tzedakah to do. Think about something else. Study something, right? That's the best solution. And I can tell you this from experience. It works. When you get angry at someone you love, instead of letting your words to, instead of exploding and leave it, do something else and come back to it later if you want to. Now, in this spirit, we're going to watch another video, which is an interview with Dr. Reuven Firestein, a renowned Romanian-born Israeli clinical development and cognitive psychologist. He was the founder and director of the International Center for the Enhancement of Learning Potential in Jerusalem. His theories have been implemented in both clinical and classroom settings internationally, in dozens of countries over the years. The Rebbe referred many patients to his care. So here we're going to see Dr. Firestein recounting how the most difficult case of his 50-year career and how the Rebbe guided him through this case, and how the Rebbe's approach to psychology stemmed not in his negligence, God forbid, but in his deep faith in the divine spark in every person.
Professor Reuven Feuerstein is a world-renowned Israeli clinical and developmental cognitive psychologist, founder and director of the International Center for the Enhancement of Learning Potential. His applied systems are being implemented in over 80 countries across the globe.
The rabbi referred to me children for their problems of development, some epileptic children, some Down syndrome children. And wherever I came, and wherever I visited or I worked in my field, people were addressing themselves to me. The rabbi wants you to see our child. And some of them have received really letters from the rabbi, or the word from the rabbi, that I should see their child. And I must say, they believe that such a thing is possible, that people with genetic disorders, chromosomal disorders, can be turned into high functioning, normal functioning, and very close to study, to Yiddishkeit, etc. I had it very much from the rabbi. So it was a daring thing, because at this time, people didn't believe it's possible. One particular case, which I cannot She's close. Therefore, she came from a country in Europe. This boy was considered to be mentally defective. One didn't believe that he will ever be able to function and to be independent and to be. And this man, the father, in some way was not a very religious person. Came to the rabbi. The rabbi told him to bring his son to me. The son came here and was placed in a family. He learned to read. He was sitting here near this door on a chair with a tin. The rabbi said to finish dinner each week. And he learned this, the third year that he was with us. He learned this. And Baruch Hashem, this went very well. And we were already feeling that we have done what the rabbi told us to do and empowered us to do. And we felt so. Then things happened. And this young man, he came in the great danger. Not only drugs, but things which I cannot tell you. He ran away and he came into a place from where very few people came out. And I then addressed myself to the rabbi. The rabbi said, don't leave him off your hand. Continue. But he gave me a suggestion to send somebody to take him out of this place. I have never believed it that it was. But the rabbi said, I've sent somebody. He took out this young man from this terrible, promiscuous drug people. It's all, there's no Abirah Ba'olam he was not involved with. Came back. I want you to know, he is now the father of 4 children. Many of them, 2 of them, learning in yeshiva. And they are the only children of this family, only grandchildren of this family, which the grandparents can be proud of. I, as a psychologist, and one says a good psychologist, could never believe that this, with my own knowledge, my own psychology, I would have ever been able to do it. Usually, in such cases, we raise our hands, nothing to do. Not the rabbi. I must tell you something. Psychology, as it is taught, is very limited. Our understanding of the other is very much affected and related to our understanding of ourselves. In the way the rabbi understood the condition of the individual, the way he claimed and suggested and felt empowered to say, yes, do it. There was a very different way of seeing the human being. Not as a just reflection of yourself, but as something which comes E'ara Ilela.
Okay. As a summary, we're saying behind the Rebbe's approach, psychology, is a deep faith in the divine inner health of the human being. when disturbing and negative thoughts become the dominant voice in a person's conscious mind, this core of health can be neglected and sent to the back burner. Through engaging the conscious mind in outside healthy places, the disturbing thoughts lose their dominance, allowing for the core inner health to reemerge and bring healing. Now, with this said, we're able to move on to our last topic, and that is the Rebbe and Dr. Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was one of the great fathers of modern psychology. He was born in 1905, passed away in 1997, and his famous book, best-selling book, Man's Search for Meaning, and the founder of logotherapy. He was born in Vienna. He survived the Holocaust. He was in the concentration camps for around 3 years. His parents, his brother, his pregnant wife, they were all murdered. Despite all this, he never lost his faith in human dignity and the human being ability to transcend the most horrific circumstances and surroundings. After the war, he returned to Vienna, where he developed and lectured upon his own approach to psychological healing, which is called logotherapy. Now, let me just have a look at the chat. Master. Safara, I have his book. Happy to lend it to anyone who would like to read it. Wonderful. Thank you, Safara. I might want to borrow it. So, what is logotherapy? Meaning-centered psychotherapy. Frankl believed that a sense of meaning enables people to overcome painful experiences. So have a look. You can see in text number 5 where he outlines it itself. We're not going to read it inside, but it's basically what he says, where he explains what logotherapy is. It's less introspective. It focuses on the future, logotherapy, right? The logotherapy focuses on the fulfillment of the patient, his meaning. It's meaning centered. Okay. He believed that we are all primarily driven by striving to find meaning in life, and that the sense of meaning enables us to overcome painful experiences. There's different theories of what motivates people to do anything. One of them is sexuality, one theory, I forgot who said that. One of them is something else, and he says it's meaning. Viktor Frankl says it's meaning. We can see the similarities between the Rebbe's approach and Viktor Frankl's approach. The Rebbe's approach that we explored today, that every person inherently has meaning and health inside of them. And you only have to just let it flow to be a healthy, stable person. Now, the story about the connection between the Rebbe and Viktor Frankl is an interesting one, where the Chabad emissaries of Vienna, who moved there in 1981, they were in the town in Vienna, and they in the city, and they heard about Viktor Frankl, but he never attended the synagogue or anything. And then when they sent the calendar with the appeal, he started to donate. And then they met him and they understood why. And this is the video of Rabbi Biederman, who's a Chabad rabbi in Vienna, telling the story of how the Rebbe encouraged and strengthened Viktor Frankl at a very important junction in his life.
Rabbi Yaakov Biederman is the director of Chabad Lubavitch in Austria. Shortly after he arrived in Vienna in 1981, he began to receive annual contributions from Dr. Viktor Frankl, the pioneering psychiatrist and founder of logotherapy.
התעלומה הזו, שפרופסור פרנקל מצא לנכון לתרום דווקא לחב"ד, לארגון דתי, לארגון שעוסק בהפצת היהדות, למרות שהוא עצמו לא, בשום צורה לא הזדהה כאדם ששייך, נפטרה לנו הרבה שנים אחר כך. רק בשנת תשנ"ה. איש ביטחון מודיע לי שישנה אישה מבוגרת שמעוניינת לפגוש אותי, ואני אמרתי לו שיכניס אותה. והיא התחילה במילים האלו, היא אמרה לי, קוראים לי מרגרטה חייס. אם אתה חושב שאתם השלוחים הראשונים של הרבי לאוסטריה, יש לי בשבילך הפתעה. אני הייתי השליחה הראשונה של הרבי לאוסטריה. הייתי די המום, והיא ממשיכה לספר. היא קיבלה הזמנה לאישה ביחידות עם הרבי. ובאותה הזדמנות אני סיפרתי לרבי שמפעם לפעם אני חוזרת לאוסטריה. ובסיום אותו מפגש, באותה יחידות, הרבי ביקש ממנה שבפעם הבאה שהיא נוסעת לאוסטריה, הוא היה רוצה שהיא ייצור קשר עם המזכירות של הרבי. הוא רוצה לבקש ממנה שתמלא משימה מסוימת. זאת אומרת, רק כמה חודשים אחר כך התכוננתי לחזור לאוסטריה. אמרו לי בשמו של הרבי שכשאני מגיעה לווינאי, שאני אצור קשר עם פרופסור ויקטור פרנקל, ושאמסור לו בשם הרבי שלא יתייאש ושלא יבוש מפני המלאגים, ושימשיך בדרכו וימשיך בהפצת משנתו, שיתחזק, והרבי מברך אותו שהשם יצליחו והוא יזכה לפריצת דרך. דוקטור ויקטור פרנקל היה פסיכיאטר עמית של זיגמונד פרויד לפני השואה בווינה. אחרי שהוא היה במחנות ריכוז וחווה מצבים יוצאי דופן, הגיע למסקנה הפוכה. הוא אמר, האדם ביסודו הוא מחפש תכלית ותוכן לחייו, ולכן הוא האמין שרפואת הנפש מאוד קשורה יותר עם הענקת תוכן ואמונה, ערכים לבן אדם. הוא עמד בראש מרפאה חשובה, והוא גם היה מרצה באוניברסיטה, והשתתפו רבים בהרצאותיו, אבל יחד עם זאת, הוא היה מושא ללעג ולקלס, כי האסכולה הפסיכואנליטית של פרויד שלטה בכיפה, והיו מפריעים לו אפילו באמצע ההרצאות. הוא היה עד כדי כך פגוע שבאותם ימים, כשמרגרטה חייס חיפשה אותו במרפאה, אמרו לה שהוא כבר תקופה לא הופיע. היא הגיעה אליו הביתה. נקשה בדלת ללא כל הודעה, ולא היה לה אפשרות להודיע לפני כן. והיא תיארה שכשהיא נכנסת לבית, כשהיא פותחת את הדלת, פותחת לה אישה שלא נראית יהודייה. היא יכלה אפילו להבחין שהיה תלוי אצלב בתוך הבית. היא הייתה בטוחה שזה מאוד מוזר שהרבי שולח אותה לעודד מישהו שגר בבית כזה. אבל בכל אופן היא עזרה אומץ ושאלה אם אפשר לראות בבקשה את דוקטור פרנקל, ואז הוא הופיע בפתח הבית, ושאל אותה מה הגברת רוצה, והיא ענתה לו שיש לה בשבילו מסר מרבי שניארסון מברוקלין, ניו יורק. ואז היא אומרת לו, הרב שניארסון ביקש ממני למסור לך שלא תתייאש, שתתחזק, אל תבוש מפני אלו שמלעיגים, סופך להצליח ותזכה לפריצת דרך. דרך אלו, זה היה תוכן הדברים שהיא מסרה לו. היא אומרת, ההתרגשות שלו הייתה משהו שהיא מעולם לא חוותה אצל אדם מבוגר ועוד אצל אישיות כזו. הוא פשוט פרץ בבכי תמרורים. ואחר כך לקח לו זמן עד שהוא יכל לדבר. הוא הראה על הניירות שהיו לו על השולחן. אלו היו ניירות דפסי הגירה לאוסטרליה. הוא היה כל כך מדוכא מהיחס אליו, שהוא החליט לעזוב את וינה. ועכשיו, כשהוא קיבל את המסר הזה ממנה, המסר שהרבי העביר אליו, הוא אמר לה, אני אתחזק, אני חוזר לעבודה ואני אמשיך. הוא התחיל בצורה מאוד בטוחה להטיף את משנתו. הספר שלו, האדם מחפש משמעות, Man's Search for Meaning, תורגם ליותר מ-12 שפות. הספר הופץ בלמעלה מ10 מיליון עותקים. אני רציתי לאשש את הסיפור הזה, אחרי שהיא סיפרה לי את זה, אני ביקשתי להתקבל לפגישה אצל פרופסור פרנקל. הוא כבר אז היה די מבוגר, למעלה מגיל 90, אני התקשרתי אליו ושאלתי אם הוא אוכל להתקבל אליו לפגישה. הוא אישית ענה בטלפון בבית, הוא אמר לי שהוא חלש מדי, הוא לא יכול להיפגש. הוא גם היה קצת קצר רוח, הוא לא היה במיטבו. אז בכל זאת, בטלפון, שאלתי אותו, אם השם, הרבי מלובביץ', הרב שנרסון, אומר לו משהו, רציתי פשוט לבדוק את הנתונים, גם איתו אישית. ברגע שהוא שמע את שמו של הרבי, אז נימת הכל השתנתה לגמרי. הוא פתאום נהיה מאוד סבלני. הוא אמר, ודאי ששמו של הרבי מלובביץ' אומר לי הרבה. אני חייב לו המון. Ich schulde ihm sehr viel, הוא אמר לי בגרמנית. הוא הוסיף ואמר, ich schätze den Rabbi sehr. hat mich in einen sehr kritischen Moment geholfen. ברגע מאוד קריטי הוא עזר לי. אני חייב לו רבות.
Wow. So, Dr. Viktor Frankl and the Rebbe's teachings of psychology has a lot in common and connect very similar. Now, on page 106, we're going to jump a bit. On page 106, there is a uplifting correspondence where the Rebbe writes to a young lady who said to the Rebbe that she's very dejected. And she feels incompetent and she doesn't have a positive outlook on her future. But it seems that she was leading a non-productive lifestyle at the time of writing this letter. So on page 106, text 8a. Understandably, the Rebbe says, I do not agree at all with the foundations upon which you construct the perspective and conclusions. By this I mean that I believe they are not grounded in reality. Your current state of mind is only temporary. And the more effort you put in, the quicker it will change. For it is absolutely clear that you have the power and also talent to be of benefit, not only to yourself, but to others as well. It is only that, like all things in the world, it is necessary to reveal and develop this potential into reality, which almost always takes effort. However, this is a degree of effort that is eminently attainable when one considers that the relatively brief efforts will benefit themselves and others for many years to come, and it will improve their and the community's welfare spiritually, materially, or both, and that these improvements will likely have a ripple effect and reach even further then one will easily appreciate that the efforts and exertions to achieve this end are well worthwhile. So the Rebbe makes a few points over here. He begins by dejecting the conclusion of this young woman about her future. And he says that the premise on which they're based are entirely false, i.e. that she's incompetent. This is not who she is. This is a passing state. And she now finds herself in there, but it will pass. And can pass even quicker the more effort she puts in. Right? Number two, in fact, the Rebbe insists that she actually has unique talents and capacities, not only to benefit itself, but to be important contributor to society. It takes effort, but according to the effort is the reward. And the next text, the Rebbe continues to tell her that it can't happen very quickly. It has to be gradual change. In order to live a productive lifestyle, I have to start by taking one small step in the right direction, and then step by step progressing. And you'll find yourself on the road to a satisfying and uplifting and fulfilling lifestyle. And the Rebbe tells her that if you want to listen to my advice, continue your studying, but you should also involve yourself with providing education several times a week. Organize groups of children, be their counselor, teach them subjects that can be understood on the level, Shabbat and festivals, get-togethers for them, and similar initiatives. The Rebbe tells them, it's not true that you're incompetent. It's not true. This is false. This will pass. This is a feeling, which is now, but it will pass. Involve yourself in positive things, step by step, and you'll get very far. Slow and steady. The road leading to B'nai is a gradual process. So you have a few points coming through over here. It's a process. The point of life is life shouldn't change drastically. It's important to begin to move in one direction, but with confidence and persistence, and you'll find yourself in a good place. But on the other hand, don't drop out of school, even though you're depressed and you don't like it. Continue your studying and develop now your talents, though. Don't wait. And then he goes on and finishes off with some nice words. And he says, consider this. There is so much to accomplish in our world, and each human carries so much potential. Due to the vast amount of work that needs to be done, we cannot afford to give up on everyone, even one capability or talent. It is therefore the mission of every single person to harness all the potentials and talents they possess to improve their part of the world. The beginning, like with everything, starts with the learning and the profession, acquiring the necessary knowledge and the general respect, especially the knowledge necessary for using the individual's unique talents. I hope that after you contemplate the above a couple times, you will immediately begin being active, and you will not be fazed by the effort that is required. You will then be able to soon witness the fruits of your labor. So this kind of encapsulates and sums up the Rebbe's approach. The key to emotional peace is direct your energy and attention to finding meaning and purpose, and with joy. Now, a bit of food for thought. Are there areas in your life where you can implement this approach? I think this is something which is, I can talk for myself, but I think it's quite a common, I think everyone can apply this to things. When sometimes we dwell on a challenge and we dwell on something negative and we think we're fixing it, but we're actually allowing it to control us and to dominate us. Maybe we can try and apply the alternative approach. When the negative energy surfaces, actively work on moving your focus to engage life outside of the problem. It's something to consider. All right.
Lesson 4. Healthy at heart. 1. A prominent approach to overcoming emotional challenges is to focus on our disturbing thoughts or emotions in an attempt to uncover and express deeper issues that lie at their core. 2. The Rebbe often advocated a contrary approach to emotional wellness. He insisted that emotional challenge can, at times, be overcome by moving the mind away from the issues and engaging it in unrelated, meaningful, and productive activities. 3. The Rebbe viewed the human soul as a divine entity that is emotionally healthy at its core. When disturbing and negative thoughts become the dominant voice in an individual's conscious mind, their healthy core is relegated to the back burner. Through engaging the conscious mind in external, healthy areas, the disturbing thoughts lose their dominance, which permits the core inner health to reemerge and bring healing.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
תודה רבה, רבנו.
Have a
Thank you, Rabbi.
I hope that
Thank you, Rabbi.
help, insight.
I feel
Stay positive,
inspired
guys.
and full of meaning.
Stay positive. Don't focus on the negative. Don't focus on the problems. Was there a filter on? My daughter might have put on it. All right.
Mashiach
Bye-bye.
עכשיו.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye.